Yuanying and Su Yunlan are searching for clues related to the demon cult in Yuan. After rummaging through a room, they find nothing. Su Yunlan suggests continuing the search. As they walk through the corridor, they encounter two men who stare at them. Su Yunlan pulls out his scissors while grinding, teasing at what they are seeing, and the men run away in fear. In the first room, they find two people doing something, whom they knock down. However, Yuanying recognizes one of them as a minister of the state of Tang who has a wife. She is angry at his immoral behavior, but Su Yunlan reminds her of their main goal. They realize that they won't find any clues in that room and decide to move on to the next one. In the second room, they find another couple playing a game. And in the third room, they find two men doing something inappropriate. Yuanying is too angry and expresses her frustration, declaring her intention to lead the soldiers and take down the place. Su Yunlan tries to calm her down and tells her not to be angry. As they talk in the hallway, a woman passes them, and Su Yunlan catches a whiff of her fragrance. He is intrigued by the scent and asks Yuanying if she smells the fragrance too. Su Yunlan approaches the woman and compliments her on her good skin and pleasant aroma. The woman teases him, suggesting that she only wants the powder for herself. However, the woman decides to give him directions and tells him to ask Zhao Mu, who should be in the utility room at that time. Su Yunlan thanks the woman for her help. In the utility room, they meet a man who offers them the powder they are looking for. Suddenly, Su Yunlan pulls out a knife and puts it to the man's neck, asking him if he is the one responsible for making the powder. The man confirms that he is, and Su Yunlan asks him about the seventh prince. The man reveals that he was forced to make the powder because his sister was taken hostage by the seventh prince. He also reveals that the Happy Spring Courtyard is a place for the children of the demon sect, and the seventh prince had instructed him to add something strange to the powder. Suddenly, Su Yunlan gives his special golden sore medicine to heal the man's wounds and offers him some medicine for his wounds. The man apologizes again, but Su Yunlan responds that he should not be worried and promises to protect him. The man offers to do anything Su Yunlan asks of him and informs them that the powder is being sent to the palace. Yuanying is surprised and mentions that in a few days it will be the king's birthday, and it turns out that the seventh prince is planning to rebel. Meanwhile, in an unknown place, Yahoo informs Demon Lord Mazan that Su Yunlan is now wanted by the royal family, and the demon sect is in disarray. Yahoo appears anxious and worried about the situation, but Mazan tries to calm him down and tells Yahoo not to be so anxious and explains that this is what Su Yunlan needs to experience. Su Yunlan, disguised as a woman, walks with Yuanying and the valets to the royal palace. Yuanying admires Su Yunlan's appearance, but Su expresses concern about being seen. However, the valets, with their unimpressive looks, comment that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Yuanying explains that they are there to celebrate her father's birthday and warns Su Yunlan to be careful not to reveal his identity. Suddenly, Su Yunlan feels a chill, and a person announces the arrival of the second prince with his wife. Su Yunlan asks about the second prince, and the valet explains that the second prince is known for being infatuated with his wife and never leaving her side, but that his wife has recently died. Su Yunlan is shocked by the news. At that moment, the second prince approaches Yuanying and informs her that their sister feels unwell in her inner body, so he has brought a gift on her behalf. Yuanying questions whether it is appropriate to bring the gift on the birthday of the emperor, as their father may not be happy with it. As the second prince glances in Su Yunlan's direction, Su Yunlan's thought interrupts, and he asks if his women's clothing is so talented that it can even captivate the most infatuated man in the world. The second prince comments to Yuanying that the girl by her side makes the emperor unhappy. Yuanying is taken aback and asks the second prince to clarify what he meant. The second prince decides to leave and says he hopes the emperor will be welcoming after all. Su Yunlan remarks on how each of the dragon's 9 sons is different, comparing the second prince to a python lurking in the dark. Yuanying agrees that he is hard to read but assures Su Yunlan that his identity should not be revealed in the palace due to the second prince's character. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the royal majesty is enjoying a dance performance when Chuki approaches and presents him with a gift, an immortality pill from overseas. The emperor is thrilled and praises Chuki's thoughtfulness. Su Yunlan senses something is off, and the seventh prince suddenly steps forward and announces that he wants to add to his father's happiness. The father wonders if the seventh prince is prepared to surprise him. The seventh prince then points to Su Yunlan and accuses him of being a dignified man of Tang, dressing up as a woman and attending the celebration with a hidden agenda. Su Yunlan is caught off guard by the sudden accusation. Su Yunlan explained that he had come to serve the kingdom and that the rebellion of the demon cult had been caused by his carelessness, but fortunately it had been harmless. He bowed down to his knees and revealed that he had been studying in the western region for the emperor's upcoming birthday to present him with a gift. The emperor was intrigued and asked to see the gift. Su Yunlan then performed his show on a bicycle, juggling fortune cookies, and the audience was amazed. The fortune cookies popped, and a moth flew out of each of them. Su Yunlan whistled, and the moths turned into golden dragons. He then wished the emperor a long life. The emperor was impressed and expressed his enjoyment of the performance, even wanting to keep the moths in the palace. Su Yun recalled the time when he had received a box of 100 moths from the 8 men, who claimed to have collected them from the garbage dump. Returning to the present situation, the royal majesty remarked on the distinct yet unfamiliar scent of the moths, and Su Yunlan was relieved that the king found it pleasing. The emperor then invited Su Yunlan to sit beside him and forget about the demon sect incidents for the day, praising his filial piety. Su Yunlan thanked him. At that moment, Grandma Mrs. Dong was listening to everything from the roof and was happy to see Su Yunlan's success. The 7th prince interrupted the celebration, claiming to have a final gift for the emperor. He ordered his soldier to bring a beautiful woman named Zhang, who then danced gracefully and captivated the royal majesty with her fragrance. The 7th prince claimed that she was a unique woman who deserved to belong only to the great emperor himself. Su Yunlan noticed that she had a plum blossom birthmark on her neck and then recalled the time when he had asked the man in the utility room how to identify his sister. The man had told him that his sister had a plum blossom birthmark on the back of her neck and shared a secret passcode. Su Yunlan then suspected that Zhang might be his missing sister. The royal majesty called out to a beautiful dancer, asking her to come to him. Dancer Zhang approached and offered him a drink, to which the royal majesty complimented her beauty and the way she made him feel. He confessed that he had never felt this way about a woman before and expressed his desire for her to accept him despite his age. Dancer Zhang cried, remembering her brother who was enslaved by the 7th prince. She then agreed to become the royal majesty's special concubine. The majesty was pleased with her response and decided to have a day of peace, inviting everyone to join. However, the 7th prince interrupted, stating that Su Yunlan, who was not a convicted criminal, could not be simply let go. He proposed that Su Yunlan undergo a month of recultivation of his morality to prove himself worthy of being welcomed into the 7th prince's family. The royal majesty asked Yunlan what he thought, but Yuan Ying disagreed with it. However, Su Yunlan interrupted his wife and agreed to the proposal, expressing his gratitude to the 7th prince for giving him the chance to change. Su Yunlan thought that staying by the 7th prince's side was a brilliant opportunity to learn about each other. The 7th prince told him that if he was interested, then he could come with him, which Su Yunlan agreed to. The 7th prince wondered about the virtuous and generous man he was and what the future of the kingdom held. Su Yunlan had an evil plan, mentioning catching a new batch of cockroaches as a gift for the 7th prince. The 7th prince felt something itchy and was disgusted when he saw a cockroach on his shoulder. He pleaded with Su Yunlan to help him kill it. Su Yunlan instantly smacked the 7th prince on the head. It became chaotic as Su Yunlan tried to catch the cockroach and eventually beat the 7th prince with his boot. After a while, the 7th prince fainted from the repeated smacking by Su Yunlan. He wondered why these kinds of things only happened to him. The crowd around them started laughing at the situation. The 7th prince then decided to leave and invited Su Yunlan to come with him to his mansion to show him how to improve. Su Yunlan then looked to Yuan Ying and told him to relax and wait for his news. Meanwhile, after the party, a noblewoman and her maidservant discussed the special concubine that had caught the emperor's attention. The noblewoman was curious about the fragrance that the concubine was wearing and demanded to know more about it. The maidservant revealed that the concubine was wearing a particular face powder, which had become a hot commodity within the palace. The noblewoman was angry and demanded that the maidservant buy some for her immediately. The maidservant hurried off to get the face powder. Meanwhile, the 7th prince was pleased with the effectiveness of his plan and believed it would aid his plans. However, he quickly shifted his attention to Su Yunlan, seeing it as a chance to have him under his control, and decided to play with him. Su Yunlan was summoned by the 7th prince and he thought that the prince might be trying to play some tricks on him. The 7th prince reminded Su Yunlan, as one of his sons-in-law, that they had not yet passed the tests of ritual, music, shooting, writing, poetry, and mathematics. He implied that this was the reason for his domineering character. Then, he told him that he was a servant but should also be up to standard, and from that day onwards, he would test him. The 7th prince thought about how he could make Su Yunlan pay the price, as he had to pay a grand tutor to barely pass the 6 arts in the past. The 7th prince began to explain to Su Yunlan that music encompasses both music and dance. Suddenly, Su Yunlan interrupted and started to pose and dance. The 7th prince was startled and asked Su Yunlan about his costume. Su Yunlan just didn't mind and started to sing and dance in freestyle and even did some breakdancing. He sang about drawing a dragon on the left and a rainbow on the right. Su Yunlan thought about how he was a diehard fan of hip-hop. The 7th prince was amazed by Su Yunlan's performance. The 7th prince acknowledged Su Yunlan's dance and music skills, but advised him not to mention dragons so casually, as they were considered the noblest beings in the world. After that moment, the 7th prince announced that the shooting test was about to begin, and they must hit a man made of grass 100 meters away with a bow, an arrow to pass the test. Su Yunlan expressed his desire to shoot birds flying in the sky instead of men made of grass. The 7th prince was surprised and wondered if he was hiding his true abilities. Su Yunlan then proceeded to aim and shoot at a bird, hitting it successfully. The 7th prince was astonished, and Su Yunlan confidently said, "Next." On the next test, Su Yunlan rode on a horse. He thought that riding was the god of autumn mountain riding. Shifting to the next test, Su Yunlan then recited some poetry, talking about apes and birds while melancholy thoughts filled his mind. He also mentioned bitter hatred in a cup before concluding that a famous poet's work was not perfect. A group of old men were stunned to hear such an old poem from Su Yunlan and wondered how the emperor's son-in-law could be so knowledgeable. After that moment, the 7th prince posed a math problem to Su Yunlan, which he solved effortlessly. The prince was impressed and invited him to follow him. A lady urged the prince to wash his hands, and some ladies threw lotus petals as they chanted. Su Yunlan was puzzled by this and wondered what it meant. As they continued their journey, they were greeted by twin ladies, which made Su Yunlan question the 7th prince's actions. The prince replied that knowing when to give up and showing dignity were important in life. He left Su Yunlan behind and went off. The twin ladies around him cheered and sang songs about waves and rivers. Su Yunlan stifled laughter, realizing that the 7th prince just came there to poop, and thought that the lives of the rich were always exciting and never dull. After that, the 7th prince ordered Su Yunlan to clean the toilet as a form of appreciation for his skills. Su Yunlan was shocked by the request and asked if he had to clean the toilet. Su Yunlan reluctantly accepted the task but was confused about where to flush the contents of the toilet. He found the whole situation strange. Su Yunlan is thrilled that his mission is accomplished after cleaning. He sees a beautiful dancer and questions if she is Xiang Fei. After that moment, Su Yunlan disguises himself, covering his face with a hood. He exclaims that this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance, then jumps from the roof and is quickly discovered by the soldiers guarding the area. In a swift move, Su Yunlan smacks one of the guards, sending him flying into the wall with such force that it crumbles upon impact. The other guard is shocked by Su Yunlan's attack but calls out to his comrade, Lao Ling, who has been thrown by the wall. Su Yunlan assures the guards that they are disposable, then grabs the head of the other guard and smacks it to the ground. He then proceeds to walk toward the room where Xiang Fei is. Upon entering the room, Su Yunlan addresses Xiang Fei, commenting on the nervousness he senses in her movements. Xiang Fei is surprised and questions his identity and warns him that trespassing in the area is punishable by death. Su Yunlan reveals his identity and responds that it is not a crime for him to be there and informs her that he knows about her and the 7th prince's plot. Xiang Fei is surprised to see that it is the prince's consort, Su, and she quickly denies his accusations. But Su Yunlan persists and questions her involvement with the incense that was used to harm others. He accuses her of being a monster and having no heart. Xiang Fei retorts that her heart fled a long time ago. Su Yunlan then shows the bracelet to her and says that it can help her to find her heart again. Xiang Fei says that it was a token of love from her brother Meng, which makes Su Yunlan gasp as he thinks it sounds like incest. Xiang Fei demands to know more about her brother's whereabouts. Su Yunlan reassures her that her brother is not dead and asks for information about the 7th prince's plot. Meanwhile, in the village, as the villagers gather, the spies of Su Yunlan rumor about the amazing new girl in the palace who has a unique fragrance that has enthralled the emperor. One of the spies mentions that his cousin who works as a maid there said everyone is rushing to buy the fragrance she uses. Yuan Ying and Mrs. Dong are riding on a horse, rushing as they pass by the villagers. They pour a fragrant scent that makes everyone stop and take notice. The villagers are amazed by the fragrance and feel sudden improvements in their physical abilities. Some even claim to have regained their sight. As everyone marvels at the fragrance, a person then tells everyone to look at the dead tree and mentions that it could bring the dead back to life. The villagers are fascinated and desperate to buy it, and the 8 men sneak into the crowd and mention that the prince's consort sold it at a factory. At that moment, Yuan Ying and Mrs. Dong stop their horses, and their spies report to them that the young master's plan of targeted advertisement was a success. Yuan Ying is skeptical of the perfume's supposed healing powers and wonders how Su Yunlan managed to create such a demand for it. Su Yunlan explains that it was all part of their plan and that if they succeed in their performance, they can make the perfume the most popular in the kingdom. Meanwhile, the 7th prince realizes that he needs to speed up the progress of his plan and requests the sedan chair as he will go to the palace. Two young twins were talking about Nyan Hua Palace. The first twin mentioned that a maid who had worked there for over 10 years went mad and attacked concubine Hua with scissors. The second twin expressed shock and mentioned that it seemed like the favored concubine Zhang was a bad omen. Meanwhile, at the prince's 7th residence, he and the 7th prince were discussing the powder that was used to disfigure concubine Hua. The 7th prince revealed that the powder was part of a plan that was proceeding smoothly, and suggested they bring some of it to He. He promised to make him a chief eunuch if he could distribute the powder to the whole palace. He expressed gratitude and said he would go to the Sa family first since they had already bought so much of the powder. After he left the 7th prince's residence, he removed his mask and revealed himself to be He Yan. Su Yunlan complimented He Yan on his acting. He Yan informed Su Yunlan that the perfume made with the powder had become popular, and the 7th prince was becoming anxious. They planned to swap the powder with the perfume and give it to concubine Zhang, who would secretly help them out. They also remained vigilant about the 7th prince's next moves. On the next day, in the palace, the 7th prince greeted his father, the royal majesty, and was invited to sit next to him. The 7th prince became frightened when he saw his father playing with his moths. He then asked about his father's relationship with concubine Zhang and was relieved to hear that she had won his father's heart. He also mentioned the problem that had occurred in the hall of concubine Hua, and offered to help his father with any worries he might have. The royal majesty expressed his concern about the incident but said he was too busy to look into it himself. He also mentioned his intention to make Zhang the head concubine and let her help manage the harem. The 7th prince was impressed by his father's decision and offered to help him out. The royal majesty agreed and asked the 7th prince to find concubine Zhang and bring her to him. In return, his father promised to make him the commander of the imperial army after the ceremony to promote Zhang. The 7th prince agreed and thanked his father, thinking that the old man had finally made it happen. The next day, the canonization ceremony took place. The minister announced that since Zhang had entered the palace, she had followed all the rules, got along with the rest of the harem, and assisted the queen in managing the harem. As a result, he declared that Zhang would be granted the title of head concubine. The royal majesty expressed that he had finally met a girl whom he couldn't take his eyes off. Zhang Fei was given the title of head concubine. However, Zhang Fei thought about the emperor, calling him a creep. The 7th prince laughs, and the royal majesty becomes enraged and asks why the prince is standing on a high platform. The soldiers then rush into the room, and the royal majesty is confused and asks what is happening. Suddenly, the 7th prince kicks the royal majesty, causing him to vomit blood. The minister catches the royal majesty from falling and accuses the 7th prince of being an unfilial son and possibly wanting to rebel. The 7th prince laughs and confirms that he is rebelling today. The majesty shows frustration and continues to taunt the 7th prince and threaten him that the royal guards are there now, but the prince is undeterred and responds with laughter. The imperial guards arrive, and the royal majesty boasts that the prince won't be able to act so arrogantly in front of them. The 7th prince challenges this notion and orders his soldier to kill a few ministers as a reminder to the old man. A group of janissaries suddenly attacks the minister, and the majesty is surprised by this. The 7th prince reveals that the janissaries are under his control and asks him how long he will be able to endure. Chuki is surprised by the quick mobilization of the 7th prince. Suddenly, the 2nd prince shows up with Yuan Ying, tries to calm the situation, and offers to ask their father to give the 7th prince a lighter punishment. But the 7th prince laughs it off, saying that both he and the 2nd prince want the throne. He insults the majesty, calling him weak and addicted to women, making him unfit to lead the country. Yuan Ying speaks up and warns the 7th prince not to act rashly. The 7th prince acknowledges her strength but orders his men to bring up Su. The 7th prince offers to trade Su's life for an unfilial son and then asks if anyone else is not convinced. Amidst the chaos, Grandma Mrs. Dong appears and urges her soldiers to attack and take down all the guards, and they respond with enthusiasm. The Dong soldiers then proceed to kill all the 7th prince's guards on the spot, leaving the 7th prince himself surprised at their strength. Mrs. Dong explains that her family's children were sent to the front lines to fight for 3 years when they became adults, while the 7th prince's guards remained in the imperial capital and were thus weak in comparison. The 7th prince was not deterred, however, and revealed a surprise attack involving kites with powder that he claimed would turn everyone into his walking dead. After the kites exploded, they only released pepper dust, which made everyone sneeze, and the guards expressed their confusion about not feeling anything, despite expecting to become walking dead. The 7th prince enters and asks why they haven't been affected. Su Yunlan smirks and reveals that everyone has moved on to fragrance water. The 7th prince is surprised and asks how Su Yunlan knows about his plan, and Su Yunlan reveals that he knew all along and even had a backup plan. Suddenly, Xiaofei appears and reveals that he was the one who found out about the plan and saved Brother Meng from being blackmailed. Su Yunlan taunts, saying he has no more cards to play, and the prince becomes angry, threatening to kill him. As he goes to attack Su Yunlan with his sword, someone stops him by merely placing their finger on the blade. Su Yunlan looks up and recognizes the person as someone he knows, expressing his surprise. Huqi is the one who stops the blade and uses his technique to blow off the head of the 7th prince. He then speaks to the people, urging them not to panic, and claims to have killed the rebels. He explains that Chu's false surrender was only a ploy to weed out those disloyal to the Tang dynasty. Chuqi asserts that the demon soldiers and horses were intended only to fight back against the 7th prince's imperial guards at a crucial moment. He reminds the Majesty of a past event when he gifted an elixir with a secret compartment containing Chu's plan to prove his innocence, and the Majesty knew about it early on. The Royal Majesty expresses surprise and wonders what Chu is saying. However, the Majesty shrugs and admits that he knew about the plan all along but had only just cooperated with Chu. Back when the Royal Highness had opened the box gifted by Chu, inside, there was a letter that said the 7th prince had rebelled against Chu and let the snake out. Dong's soldiers comment on Chu's extraordinary skills, and Yuan Ying asks Su Yunlan if he has any problems. Su Yunlan replies that he has no problems. After the commotion, Su Yunlan remarks that Chu Qi's trick was clever and had made him a hero to the audience. He then asks if anyone else noticed the similarity between the 7th prince's death and someone else's. At the back of them, where the 2nd prince is mysteriously smirking and saying that the show is about to start. Later on, Su Yunlan tells Hien to go back to the demon sect and keep an eye on Chu Qi. Hien agrees and thinks about how sharp Su Yunlan's mind is and how much he resembles his young master. On the other hand, Su Yunlan then offers to take Xiang Fei to see her brother, Meng. Xiang Fei is excited at the prospect of seeing her brother and mentions wanting to touch his thin and soft cheeks and feel his hardships during his lonely days. Su Yunlan finds her comments strange and asks her not to be weird. After a while, Meng and Xiang Fei see each other. Xiang Fei expresses her guilt over causing her brother's injuries, but Meng reassures her that being with her is worth any hardship he has faced. Su Yunlan then enters with his poker face looking at both of them with a strange expression, and at that moment, Meng Fei thanks him for his help in reuniting them. Su Yunlan states that he should be the one thanking them. Xiang Fei asks Yunlan to inform the Majesty that she will leave as a butterfly flew away from her cocoon. Yunlan agrees and asks them what their plan is. Meng reveals that they used to sell sesame seed cakes in the western region but moved to the Tang imperial capital for a better life. However, they now feel there is no place for them there and plan to return to their second brother, who is a famous knight in the western regions. Su Yunlan asks Meng about his second younger brother, and Meng proudly replies that his brother is a famous knight in the western region, who once defeated a bear with his bare hands to save people. His brother later joined a 5-man team and became a disciple of a monk. Upon his return, he inherited Tongfu Cavern, where they now sell wares. Su Yunlan finds this information familiar and agrees to send them off to the western regions the next day. Meng and Xiang Fei express their gratitude to Su Yunlan. After that moment, in Dong House, Su Yunlan asks Hien how it went. Hien responds, telling him that Chu Qi is as expected and that there is something wrong with him. He then drops a bombshell, revealing that he saw the masked man who had escaped from the hands of the Demon King previously. This causes Su Yunlan to be shocked, asking Hien if Chu Qi is related to the Bloody Skull. Su Yunlan then wonders what happened and expresses feeling chills running up his back. Masked Man and Chu Qi were having a conversation about someone who was sent to spy on them. Chu Qi said that it was not a problem and that he wanted the person to know that he would inherit the demon sect now that the Demon King was away. He then bowed and spoke to the Majesty about his sister, saying that she had done a good job helping others and the military and was worthy of taking the Lai Chu examination. Meanwhile, in the princess's residence, Yuan Ying spoke to Yunlan and thanked him for saving her father while cleaning his face. She thought that Yunlan, once a small name within the demon sect, had now become a household hero. Su Yunlan replied by saying that they were family, so there was no need for Yuan Ying to be polite. Suddenly, Su Yunlan grabbed Yuan Ying's wrist and got closer to her face, but someone knocked on the door and interrupted the moment, and they awkwardly avoided each other's faces. Yuan Ying asked Yunlan to go and deal with it first. Su Yunlan's frustration was evident as a member of the 8 clan ruined the good moment. He just awkwardly laughed it off and thanked Yuan Ying for her help. He then asked the 8-man what had happened, and the 8-man responded that there was a problem with the demon sect. 2 factions led by the envoy of Hien were facing off. Yunlan was shocked and said that he would be there immediately. At Demon's Mountain, Fu Lank and Hien were arguing about who should inherit the leadership of the sect. Chu Qi expressed his desire to show people how he runs the sect and criticized the infighting among the children of the demon sect. Su Yunlan suggested that Chu Qi take over the position with a sly smile, suspecting Chu Qi's desire for power. Chu Qi denied it, praised Su Yunlan, and acknowledged his suitability. However, he thought that the situation was amusing and saw love for everyone in the sect. He proposed to Su Yunlan that if he could do one thing, the position of the Demon King would naturally become his. Su Yunlan asked what he meant, and suddenly, Chu Qi demonstrated his power, causing the sky to darken and thunder to strike the ground. Chu Qi revealed his great mountain defense formation, the 5 elements, and 7 rainbows, which had protected the demon sect for over 100 years. However, it urgently required the 5 legendary elements, gold, earth, water, fire, and wood. Yan protested, warning that obtaining these elements would be extremely dangerous, but Fu Lang taunted him. Su Yunlan declared that he was willing to risk his life for the sake of the demon sect, whether or not he would become the Demon King. Chu Qi agreed to give them 10 days to retrieve the elements before the great masters of the demon sect made their decision. In Princess Mansion, Yuan Ying expressed her concern and surprise about the dangerous quest that Su Yunlan had agreed to. Su Yunlan explained that he must firmly hold the position of the Demon King to prevent falling under someone's command before he could find his father. Lai Tang intervened, asking Su Yunlan to clarify his statement about the legendary golden element, and recalled seeing something similar before. Lai Tang and Su Yunlan arrived at a gambling house where they had first met. Lai Tang explained that he had not loved gambling before, but since he had become highly ranked, the gambling house had been very polite to him and had even shown him one of the town's great treasures, a golden toad. Lai Tang revealed that the golden toad was the reason why the gambling house continued to operate in the city, despite the actions of the 7th prince. Yan expressed disapproval of gambling, but Lai Tang begged for forgiveness and promised to change his ways. Su Yunlan, in thought, questioned their flirtatious behavior. He then asked who would take over the gambling house after the 7th prince's death. Lai Tang explained that the government was going to seize it, but they had discovered an amazing water source behind it, so it had become official. Su Yunlan realized that he would have to play it by ear, implying that he would need to adapt to the changing circumstances. As Lai Tang, Su Yunlan, and Yan entered the gambling house, people began to stare at them in their foreign suits. The other patrons commented on their strange attire and called them weirdos. The manager of the gambling house, Liu, approached them and asked if they were foreign officials. Su Yunlan introduced themselves as visitors from a land far away called Las Vegas and explained that they had come to explore and see the famous gambling house. Liu was intrigued and offered to take them to the VIP room. In his thoughts, Su Yunlan used his 9 nether souls. He then possessed himself in the form of an ant and explained that, according to ancient texts, the golden toad is attracted to yin energy and sweet things, which ants share the same characteristics. He hoped that by possessing an ant and searching for sweet things, he would be able to find clues about the golden toad. After a while, the dice mistress arrived, and Su Yunlan challenged her to a game. Su Yunlan quickly rolled the dice and announced that it was a double, which caused the other people to laugh and question the claim since there were only 3 dice on the table. However, the dice mistress confirmed that there was indeed a double. She asked for Su Yunlan's name and was intrigued by the group's identities as Gao Tui, Zhen Jianzi, and Liu Gui's Yang. She then asked Su Yunlan how they wanted to play and what the ante would be. Su Yunlan revealed a rainbow diamond and explained its value, and they agreed to roll the dice and compare the results. Su Yunlan wanted the rainbow diamond in exchange for the precious golden toad as their offer in return. Su Yunlan suggests playing dice with Liu to determine the winner of a rainbow diamond in exchange for the golden toad from Liu's casino. Liu is surprised that Su Yunlan knows about the golden toad, but Su Yunlan explains that he knows a lot about it and that his rainbow diamond is unique in the world. The dice mistress joins, telling the manager that only dice can beat her. Liu agrees but reminds her that the golden toad is a high requirement for the environment and cannot be easily moved out. Su Yunlan suggests they play a game where they would try to guess each other's dice, and if someone failed to do so, they would win. As the dice mistress shook the dice, she began to suspect that Su Yunlan was deliberately trying to lose. Liu, on the other hand, couldn't understand why Su Yunlan would risk losing money by doing so. Su Yunlan then confidently guessed 123, and the dice mistress revealed her own guess, 456. In the midst of the game, both Su Yunlan and the dice mistress set open at the same time, revealing their dice to be the same number. Liu was confused and couldn't believe it, but Su Yunlan explained that even though the dice mistress had guessed correctly, she had still lost because of their earlier agreement. The dice mistress was surprised and confused, wondering how Su Yunlan had managed to guess her answer correctly but wrong at the same time. Liu praised Su Yunlan's skills but then revealed that the golden toad was located far away, so he couldn't give it to them immediately. However, Su Yunlan called out to Jian Zai, who was to be Lai Tang's alias, and he kicked the wall, revealing the golden toad hidden behind it. Liu was surprised. Yan explained that it was just a formality to ensure that Liu wouldn't be dishonest. After winning the game, Lai Tang compliments Su Yunlan on his impressive skills in fooling the dice goddess. Su Yunlan credits the 8th group, which apparently uses various creatures like snakes, mice, insects, and ants to assist them in their schemes. Lai Tang then asks Su Yunlan about a technique he used to make He Yan's chest appear a certain way, but Su Yunlan scolds him for being inappropriate. He Yan is confused and doesn't understand what they are talking about. 8 men reported to Su Yunlan that, based on surveys, a wood-based product called Kai Bao was known as the Oriental Pearl. They claimed that it was commonly worn by regular people and could help maintain youthfulness for at least 10 years. Upon hearing this, Su Yunlan was intrigued and asked where he could find it. The 8 men informed him that they had found it, but they had heard that all the Oriental pearls in the world were controlled by one person. Su Yunlan was curious and asked who this person was, to which they responded that it was the second prince. At the second prince's residence, He Yan tells Su Yunlan that the second prince went to the old forest to seek the Oriental pearl to save his wife's body after she died in his early years. Su Yunlan thinks the second prince is a decent person, but He Yan asks him if the second prince will help them. Su Yunlan just smiled and shrugged, telling him that he wasn't sure since his wife was busy finding the water elemental treasure, and thinks that he will help them. Suddenly, a beautiful maiden greeted and asked Su Yunlan and He Yan to sit inside as the second prince wanted to see them. Su Yunlan and He Yan were surprised that the second prince knew they were there. As they strolled down the corridor, Su Yunlan asked about the white curtains all over the area. The maiden shared that the second prince and his wife often walked that way and that his wife had a unique skin condition requiring sunlight exposure, but not direct sun contact, and these curtains gave her the perfect wind and sun shield. After a while, they saw the second prince where he was waiting and greeted Su Yunlan, saying he had long wanted to get acquainted with him. Su Yunlan apologized for intruding, but the second prince insisted that he was not intruding and had been waiting to meet him for a long time. Su Yunlan thought that the second prince's power and charm had put him at ease, despite being on guard around most people, and also thought that he was weird. He then asked the second prince how he knew they were there, and the second prince explained that it was his wife's personal maid, Baizu, who had extraordinary sixth senses since childhood. Baizu also said that she could hear Su Yunlan's heartbeat. The second prince asked Baizu to bring his box, to which Baizu agreed. He expressed his desire to make friends with Su Yunlan and wanted to give him a gift. He was uncertain about what to offer but decided to spare 3 or 4 Oriental pearls. The second prince laughed and admired Su Yunlan's wording. He assured him that he had enough beads for his wife and handed over the box to Baizu. Baizu brought the box to Su Yunlan, and the second prince explained that the box must remain sealed as the beads were covered in dirt when they were produced. The aura of the beads dissipated quickly once the dirt was washed away, making it difficult to open the box. Su Yunlan was grateful and offered to help the second prince if he ever needed anything that didn't go against his principles. After they got out of the second prince's residence, Su Yunlan suddenly felt a python watching him from the shadows and was sweating. The 8 clanmen appeared and told him that the princess had found the water elemental treasure. Meanwhile, at the second prince's residence, Baizu informed the second prince that the Oriental pearls were tampered with, according to the orders of the demon sect Chu Qi. The second prince seemed unsurprised by the news and asked for more information. He also instructed Baizu to clean up the pond since he hated the color red and to kill all the carp sent by the ministers. Yuanying and Su Yunlan are standing by a lake, and Yuanying is telling Su Yunlan about a fish that was spotted in the lake with a crystal lake jade bracelet and 2 yub wings. According to Yuanying, it was the Kai Bao cold dragon fish of the water system. Su Yunlan is surprised and asks if it's here in this lake. He tells her to let the fish matter aside and asks Yuanying if she remembers the first time they met. He then grabs Yuanying and jumps into the lake, which makes Yuanying surprised and annoyed at Su Yunlan. Suddenly, Yuanying loses her balance in the water and almost falls, but Su Yunlan quickly helps her, and Yuanying gets embarrassed as they get close to each other. Su Yunlan thinks that taking a bath with his wife is like heaven. He then softly scolds his wife for being so clumsy. Yuanying asks him why he's holding her so tight. Su Yunlan thinks about how beautiful his wife is and then reveals that he is actually Xuan Q Lan. Yuanying is surprised and confused and tells him that Xuan Q Lan is the dead son of his foster father. Suddenly, a fish jumps between them, and Yuanying recognizes it as the cold dragon fish. Su Yunlan asks her to go ashore and uses his 9 nether souls to levitate the fish. He catches it easily, and Yuanying warns him not to let it return to the water, or it will disappear without a trace. However, the cold dragon fish releases a power, and Su Yunlan's father, Demon Lord Mazan, suddenly appears. Su Yunlan remembers the day when he was young and his father promised to buy him candied haws. Returning to the current situation, Su Yunlan calls out to his father, asking if he knows about something. Mazan appears and questions Su Yunlan about his long absence, expressing his disappointment at Su Yunlan's decision to keep hiding from him. Ma Zun hands over a candied ha to Su Yunlan, warning him not to lose it. Su Yunlan suddenly hugs his father Ma Zun and apologizes. Ma Zun calls out his name Q Yunlan and he hugs him back. Later in the moment, Su Yunlan and Ma Zun are fishing, and Yuan Ying is just standing behind Su Yunlan. Su Yunlan asks his father why he hasn't shown up earlier, and Ma Zun just replies that he was waiting for the bait. Su Yunlan gazed at his acquired elements and was taken aback to see Yuan Ying with his long-lost companions, Xiao Ying and Yu. Yuan Ying explained that Yu had visited her special assassin camp, the Rose Camp, to express gratitude towards Su Yunlan. When Yu learned of Su Yunlan's quest for the 5 elemental treasures, she offered her help and even knew the whereabouts of the fire elemental treasure. Su Yunlan was thrilled and asked to be taken there quickly. Upon arriving at the Flaming Mountain, Su Yunlan asked Yu if this was the right place, and she inquired if he had been there before, to which he confirmed knowing the owner knew. Suddenly, a silhouette of a woman flying toward them appeared and demanded to know their business. Xiao Ying identified her as Niu and greeted her, and Niu soon recognized him and Yu and greeted them both with excitement. She hugged both of them, and Su Yunlan was surprised by the unexpected reunion. After that moment, Niu noticed Su Yunlan and asked Yu why she came with him, noting his handsomeness. Yu explained that Su Yunlan once saved their lives and is the prince consort to the Tang dynasty's princess, just like Niu. Niu expressed admiration for Su Yunlan's reputation as the prince consort of the Tang dynasty. Su Yunlan awkwardly responded and asked for Niu's surname. Niu introduced herself as Niu Ruan, the ruler of the Flaming Mountain, and asked Su Yunlan to call her by her first name. Niu asked Yu why they had come to see her, and Su Yunlan explained that he was from the demon sect and needed the Zhu Ningjai heavenly treasure, which he heard Niu possessed. Niu understood the significance of the treasure and assumed that Su Yunlan was in great need of it to have come to her personally. She informed Su Yunlan that the treasure they sought was not a physical object but rather an organ of a unique creature found in the Flaming Mountain. The majority of these creatures were Zhuhan cows, which had a unique diet of flames that affected their blood and produced the Zhu Ningjai. Su Yunlan asked how they could get the treasure, to which Niu replied that they must kill the cows. Su Yunlan expressed surprise and hesitation, but Niu assured him that it was better for the cows to die than to live a life plagued by illness and madness. Later, Su Yunlan expressed his gratitude to Niu for her help. Su Yunlan and Yu then jumped into the fray to collect the treasure, and Yu expressed annoyance as one of the cows ran toward her. Yu skillfully sliced off the cow's head, causing blood to spill onto the ground. Xiao Yin, in the form of a demon, began to slash at the cows with his claws. Meanwhile, Su Yunlan used his 5 spirits to conquer the key and tame the iron, gaining control over the iron swords that flew toward the cows and pierced their bodies. After the fight had subsided, Su Yunlan thanked Niu for allowing him to complete his mission, and prepared to leave. Su Yunlan was curious about Niu's mask and asked Yu about its origins, learning that Niu had been badly injured and disfigured by a man, causing her to wear the mask to cover her face. Yu also revealed that the man responsible for Niu's disfigurement was imprisoned in the depths of the Flaming Mountain. As Su Yunlan pondered the possibility of the imprisoned man being someone he knew, Niu was seen in a new light, determined to seek revenge on her tormentor. At the princess's mansion, Su Yunlan returned and was greeted by Lai Tang, who informed him that his mother-in-law was outside with his sister-in-law, Yinger. Later, Su Yunlan was surprised to see his grandmother, Mrs. Dong, who had brought him the flowing bricks, the earth elemental treasure he had been searching for. Su Yunlan was amazed at his grandmother's knowledge and thanked her for bringing the bricks. Yuan Ying urged Su Yunlan to hurry back to the demon sect and restore everything back to normal with the help of the elemental treasures. Upon their return to the demon sect, Su Yunlan presented all 5 elements and asked them to quickly set to repairing the mountain's formation. Chu Qi praised Su Yunlan's success in finding all of the elemental treasures in such a short amount of time and hinted at the possibility of Su Yunlan becoming the next demon king. However, He Yan warned Su Yunlan to be on his guard as Chu Qi's behavior seemed suspicious. On a mountain in the demon sect, a ritual was taking place to repair the formation. The elemental treasures had been placed on a statue. Fu Lang explained that the ritual required the participation of 5 martial arts masters, including himself, Chu Qi, and He Yan. However, they were still lacking 2 more participants. Su Yunlan offered to join in as the young master of the demon sect. Just then, Yehu shouted from the cliff of the mountain, announcing his arrival. Chu Qi was pleased that General Yehu had come in person, and they began the ritual with the 5 elements. Fu Lang commanded the formation to begin, and while the transformation began, Su Yunlan wondered about the second prince's pearl, causing him to get thrown into the formation. He Yan called out to Yunlan, while Chu Qi advised him not to get distracted. 8-Man asked Su Yunlan if he was okay. Su Yunlan was relieved that he had noticed something before things got worse. He Yan looked towards where Su Yunlan had been thrown, and 8-Man expressed concern for the young master. Yehu asked everyone to leave it to him, and Fu Lang realized he had almost killed He Yan as well. Chu-Ki thought that Su Yunlan's death would make him the Demon King. Yehu asked about Su Yunlan's condition, and Fu Lang assumed that Su Yunlan had sacrificed his life due to the impurity in the wood elemental treasure. He Yan was irritated by Fu Lang's words. Fu Lang then announced to the masked children and accused Su Yunlan of trying to cheat his way to the position of the Demon King. The masked children praised Chu-Ki's power, and Fu Lang suggested that Chu-Ki would be the only suitable candidate for the position of the Demon King. The masked children agreed, and suddenly Demon Lord Mazan appeared from the top of the statue. Chu-Ki was surprised, and Mazan commanded everyone to stand. Su Yunlan remarked about his father's amazing appearance, and Chu-Ki asked why Mazan had not been in seclusion to cultivate. Mazan responded by asking if Chu-Ki thought he was dead. Su Yunlan expressed his admiration for his father, and Mazan declared that the whole situation had been a test for the demon sect. He warned that anyone who tried to damage the demon sect would be killed. The Black Knights arrived, and the masked children begged for mercy while calling on Chu-Ki to save them. Mazan asked Chu-Ki how many people he should kill and who he should kill. Chu-Ki responded by shouting, "Die." The masked children were slashed and murdered in front of Su Yunlan. He was surprised and tried to help, but Mazan stopped him from going towards them. Mazan told Su Yunlan that times had changed, and that such people were no longer welcome in this place, so the betrayal would never happen again. He then gave Su Yunlan a jade token, signifying that it was time for him to become the supreme leader of the demon sect. Yehu handed over the position of master of the demon sect to Su Yunlan by destroying the holy fire token in his hand. Demon Lord Mazan confirmed that the entire demon sect would now only follow Su Yunlan and the jade token. Yehu said that Su Yunlan was now officially the master of the demon sect. Mazan tells Su Yunlan that he has been secretly investigating the real reason behind the murders that have occurred over the years. He reveals that the Yangui sect, behind Ningyur, whom Su Yunlan remembers, is one of the best medicine refining sects in the world, and that they were once suppressed by other martial arts sects. Besides the incident involving their father and son, they also kept two treasures hidden, the time mirror and the sun and moon shuttle. Su Yunlan expresses surprise upon hearing about the treasures and states that they sound super dangerous, but Yehu reveals that they are just normal treasures. He goes on to say that the Black Knights have been tracking down the origins of these treasures and finally found a clue in a strange place. Yehu then narrates his story of visiting a small village surrounded by peach blossoms where he found people wearing ancient clothes who seemed happy and entirely self-sufficient. They recognized the time mirror and the sun and moon shuttle, which surprised Yehu. They also told him that the treasures were like a lock and key, and each sun and moon shuttle could open the time mirror, where anything could be stored and preserved forever. Mazan suggests that the thing hidden in their time mirror may be what those people want to fight for, and that Su Yunlan must help Yinger win the upcoming reserve assignment so they can enter the treasury of the Emperor of the Tang Dynasty, where the time mirror is likely kept. Su Yunlan agrees to help and also warns Mazan to be careful about Chu-Ki, who had connections with the ghost-faced man and fought with him in Haiyun City before escaping. Mazan investigates the conspiracy behind Chu-Ki and requests to borrow Su Yunlan's friends Yu and Ying to investigate the link between the monster and the bloody skulls. Su Yunlan also mentions the second prince and reveals that during the ritual to restore the formation, it was only the second prince's wood elemental treasure that caused a problem. He expresses doubt about the second prince's true character. Meanwhile, the second prince expresses his surprise about the Demon King being alive, and Chu-Ki assures him that their plans are not completely ruined, but only delayed. The second prince asks about the progress of the elixir manufacturing, to which Chu-Ki responds that they are performing live experiments on the first batch and offers to show it to him. Chu-Ki calls for his men with Fu Lang to be brought in. Fu Lang appears to have been transformed into a baby. The second prince is astonished to see Fu Lang in this form, and Chu-Ki explains that they need to perform live testing before they can properly produce the elixir. He also expresses concern about the reorganization of the demon sect as he does not have much power there. At the royal palace, the royal majesty expressed his desire to choose a successor to manage the dynasty for the next 100 years. His second son expressed concern for his father's aging, but the royal majesty laughed in response. Minister Den read out the announcement that the people of Zaicheng had long been independent and self-sufficient, and the majesty wished to add Zaicheng to their territory without resorting to force. Therefore, all the princes and princesses would compete to sway Zaicheng using their abilities, and the one who could gain the most territory would be chosen as the heir. Yuan Ying, Lai Tang, and the second prince all agreed with the announcement, and the competition for succession began. In the Zaicheng territory, villagers were discussing the upcoming selection process for the next ruler of the Tang dynasty. Some were skeptical about the empress ruling the dynasty, while others saw it as a disaster. Lai Tang became enraged at their comments, but Yuan Ying remained calm and focused on understanding the people's problems. Lai Tang looked behind and thought that he hated the Zaicheng people. Meanwhile, the second prince visited a village and offered to help the people defend against beasts. The villagers were grateful and expressed their willingness to support him in the selection process for the next ruler of the Tang dynasty. The second prince thought that he had managed to sway 4 territories in one day. After that moment, the second prince's messenger interrupted him while he was with a lady and startled her. The second prince scolded his messenger for his lack of discretion and asked if Baizu was alright, to which Baizu responded that she was fine. He then asked the messenger what had happened and learned that there was news of a man going north from a caravan. The second prince didn't see it as a big deal but emphasized the importance of urging the caravan to remain stable. Meanwhile, Su Yunlan and the 8-man discussed the recent successes of the second prince in swaying 4 territories in one day. The 8-man explained that the prince knew Zicheng very well and had brought a lot of supplies with him. Initially, they were unsure what the supplies would be used for, but it turned out that the prince had brought tools and officials to help with water management in the first territory. In the second territory, which had recently experienced an earthquake, the prince brought a group of masons to help with building repairs. The third and fourth territories were often attacked by wild animals, so the prince brought them hunting tools and a team of hunters to assist. Su Yunlan acknowledged that bringing supplies to the towns was an obvious strategy to win them over, but noted that the second prince seemed to know everything about these territories and had prepared countermeasures for all of their problems. He suggested that there were only 2 ways the prince could have achieved this level of preparation. Either he had an insider within Zicheng who was passing him details about all of the territories, or he somehow had something to do with these recent events. The 8-man argued that their research indicated that these incidents had occurred recently. Su Yunlan then suggested the second possibility, that the second prince may have had something to do with these recent events. As Su Yunlan's group traveled to the northern town of Volcano, they were met with harsh and cold weather. Su Yunlan commented on the weather and expressed concern about how people could survive in such a place. He Yan questioned if it was a ghost town, but Su Yunlan insisted that there must be someone there. He then assigned He Yan and Lai Tang to investigate while he and the princess set up camp. Yuan Ying expressed his worry about what might happen if Lai Tang found out the truth, to which Su Yunlan replied to just go with the flow. Later, an 8-man explained to Su Yunlan that the town relies on volcanic rocks to keep warm. However, the ore is nearly depleted, and the mayor recently went searching for a new digging location, but disappeared. The second prince arrived and gave the villagers wool and animal products and brought lambs to teach them farming and shepherding to free them from their dependency on the rocks. He also accused the mayor of selling the location of the volcanic rock and fleeing, causing the town to follow him. Su Yunlan expressed doubts about the effectiveness of shepherding in this area, and suspected that the mayor's disappearance was too coincidental. While they were talking, Yuan Ying spotted people outside. She saw commotion that a kid was being harassed by angry people who blamed him for his father's disappearance. The kid then kicked one of the men, causing the man to get angry and threatened to kill him. Su Yunlan intervened, and Yuan Ying spoke, telling them that the resident was known for assistance and love and didn't expect such a terrible scene. The men then recognized the princess from the Tang dynasty. Despite their initial hostility, Su Yunlan offered to help, asking if the kid was okay and where his home was. In the midst of the chaos, He Yan asked Lai Tang to stop what he was doing. Lai Tang responded that he simply wanted to be with He Yan. He Yan asked Lai Tang what he meant by that, and Lai Tang replied that He Yan already knew the answer. He Yan then reminded Lai Tang of the significant difference between them. He was a prince, and he was from the demon sect. He believed that their differences were too great, and they could not be together. Lai Tang disagreed, citing his sister and her husband as an example of 2 people from different backgrounds who are happily together. He Yan objected again, this time pointing out that he was a man. Lai Tang responded by urging He Yan to dress appropriately and not catch a cold before confessing that he always knew He Yan was a man. He added that from the moment he first saw He Yan, he was struck by his beauty. Lai Tang then declared that love should have no restrictions and that he had everything figured out and only wanted He Yan. A kid arrived at their house. He was knocking on the door while announcing his arrival to his mom, letting her know that he had brought some guests with him. His mom opened the door, and upon seeing him, she hugged him right away, and was worried that he had been bullied again because of the way he looked. Quanner responded that his dad always told him to be brave and not even cry. He told his mom that worrying about him was useless. As he was explaining to his mom, Quanner introduced Ying and Su Yunlan as the people who had also helped him that day. His mom's attention suddenly shifted to Ying and Su Yunlan. She asked the two if they were with the second prince and warned them to go away as she would not listen to whatever they had to say. Su Yunlan understood the mother's reaction and reassured her that the two of them were not with the second prince. Kwanner's mom stammered as she couldn't believe she was standing in front of the princess herself. She quickly apologized for her act as she had not recognized her right away. Su Yunlan intervened to cut the tension, telling Kwanner's mom to drop the honorifics as the two of them were also younger than her. He then proceeded to ask for her name. Kwanner's mother introduced herself as Yu, the wife of Chen Shuang, who was also the mayor of the town. She also properly introduced her children, Chen Quan, and his younger sibling who was still learning to speak, Chen Quan. Su Yunlan was surprised by what he had just heard as he could not believe that they had actually met the wife of the missing mayor. Mrs. Yu explained that Kwanner had only gone out to beg for food, but because of everything that had happened, he had been treated poorly. Ying then proceeded to ask Yu if she had any idea why Mr. Chen was missing. Mrs. Yu then admitted that she was searching for him too. She claimed that they had been together for 10 years and that he had always been good and respectful to his family, and they were very happy. She then cried as she continued to explain that Mr. Zhen had heard something about a merchant who was selling blueprints for mining volcanic rocks. He told her that he would meet with him, and that was the last time she had talked to him as he had never come back. People had spread the word about Mr. Zhen selling the rocks and fleeing away, but Yu was never convinced as she knew her husband was never corrupt. She firmly believed that Mr. Zhen would never hurt his family for such an act. Su Yunlan agreed with the idea that even if he was willing to betray the whole town as mayor, he would never leave his family behind. He suspected that there was something fishy going on. Ying agreed, and they decided to let Mrs. Yu rest for a while, as she missed her husband so much that they could not afford to bother her further at this time. As they were about to leave, Su Yunlan noticed something sneaking on his back. He then successfully caught the boy. Ying noticed something that was tossed from the boy Su Yunlan had captured. She realized that it was Kwanner's Chen family amulet. Ying also found a map of the volcanic rock mining area. Su Yunlan was surprised when he heard it. He then also confirmed that the cloth that was used was the same as the one Mrs. Yu was wearing. Su Yunlan recalled what Mrs. Yu had said about their family. The family consisted of 4 members, and he also saw that this kid not only had an amulet but also a map that belonged to Mr. Chen. Su Yunlan was wondering if the kid was an illegitimate child of Mr. Zhen. More questions were popping into Su Yunlan's mind as he started to think thoroughly about what had just happened. He could not believe Mr. Zhen could do something like this to his family, a family that was close to each other. On the other hand, the second prince was in front of a small crowd. He told the people to relax and to eat and dress warmly because today he would teach them the ways of shepherding. The people responded positively, and some even called him their savior from heaven. Out of nowhere, Su Yunlan cut through the crowd and announced to the people that he had found the map to the volcanic rock mine. He told them that they could beat the harsh winter by mining the rocks. The second prince could not believe what he had just witnessed and thought Su Yunlan was going to cause trouble. The second prince remained composed in front and warned the crowd that winter was almost here already, meaning that even with the map and the process of mining, it would take them 2 or 3 days, by which everything would be frozen by the time they got back. Su Yunlan told the crowd not to worry about getting the job done late, and how everything will freeze once they get back. He reassured everyone that if they could not dig enough volcanic rocks in 3 days, he himself would help them out. The second prince remembered the spies reporting to him that he would only take 3 people with him. He was confident that 3 people in 3 days would not even reach the rock. The second prince then proceeded to ask Su Yunlan if he would break his promise. He threatened him, saying that he was risking the entire town for his dishonesty. If he did not keep his promise, then he would surely launch the entire region into chaos. Su Yunlan confidently responded that they would see it in 3 days' time. Yan was showing doubts because the people they were bringing did not even number 10. He was wondering how they would be able to complete the mining within 3 days. Yan continued that even with a map, the manpower they needed to move the equipment, survey the area, and everything else that was involved was insufficient. Su Yunlan did not even shake his confidence and only responded that times had changed. He then proceeded to show the volcanic rock in his palm, which he got from Mrs. Zhen. Su Yunlan had already spent some time studying the rock. He claimed that it contained iron, which meant his iron control ability could detect them, and they could survey the area in no time. He then proceeded to show the blueprint they would follow, which contained the mining method. He finished by saying that the elite soldiers could build the mining equipment and dig the tracks. Yu and Ying then shared that the manpower they had could focus on building these things, but she wondered who would do the deep mining. Su Yunlan answered if they remembered the town where the second prince won, and where the people were being attacked by beasts. Apparently he took a trip there and found something that could help him. Su Yunlan cast the 9 nether soul spells. He then checked the area and exclaimed how great the place was and how it was enough for them to use for decades. He then called all the moles together as they would start to work all over and have it done soon. All the creatures that were under Su Yunlan's command were working hard together as they mined all the volcanic rocks they could find. From afar, somebody was stalking them and wondering what the prince consort was doing. He was surprised by the loud roar when a lion charged at him, making him run for his life as the lion stopped chasing after successfully scaring him. At break time, Su Yunlan gathered everyone as they were about to have their meal. Yuanying was wondering where he got all this meat from. With a bright face, Su Yunlan told her that he got it from the second prince's flock of sheep. 3 days passed, and the people were surprised to see a mountain of sparkling volcanic rocks in front of them. Some could not believe what they witnessed, claiming they had even mined enough volcanic rocks to sustain them for half of their lives. Some were even in disbelief that this was the work of the prince's consort. Su Yunlan told them that he had only done his part of the work, and a lot had already been done by their leader, Zhen. The man was shocked as it was rumored that Zhen was greedy and that he even abandoned his wife and kids. Su Yunlan corrected him, saying that he had found Zhen and used his assistance and maps to find the mining site. He was giving credit to Zhen, who made all of it possible. The people were in disbelief. Su Yunlan continued that volcanic rock mining was such a difficult task that even with the blueprints, he would not have been able to mine everything before winter came. Zhen learned from a passing merchant that there was a mining expert nearby, so he personally gave him a visit. The said expert was then moved by the mayor's sincerity, and he decided to teach them how to mine and use the equipment. Su Yunlan concluded his story that a trade was made. To pay the expert for everything, the mayor must take care of him until he passed away. The people were so grateful and got emotional when they heard the truth. Most of them cried, and some felt terrible for bullying Zhen's kid. A man saw the mayor's wife and announced her presence to everyone, as they all asked for her forgiveness. People apologized as they regretfully spread such false rumors and realized that they were actually the villains of the story. Su Yunlan hoped that this little white lie could help Mrs. Zhen and her family get through this trouble. As he walked away, he crossed paths with the second prince. The second prince was talking to himself and expressed his admiration towards the mayor, as he never knew that Zhen was such a kind character. He also claimed that since he gave the map to Su Yunlan, it seemed that he was a trustworthy person after all. The second prince then announced that he had no reason to take it back from him, so Su Yunlan could keep the sheep left over. And for the ownership of the volcano town, he assumed that he was supposed to hand it over to the princess, represented by Su Yunlan. The people cheered in agreement. They commended the humility the second prince showed, and it made them feel like the future would be great. With such greatness in his mind and talent, the second prince was a hero for some. Su Yunlan thought that the second prince conceding managed to sway the minds of a few people in this town. He exclaimed that the second prince was not simple after all. At Mayor Zhen's house, Su Yunlan and Mrs. Zhen are having a private conversation. Mrs. Zhen tells Su Yunlan that she did not actually find her husband opposed to what he announced to the people earlier. She concludes that those tools and maps were probably just made by Su Yunlan, but is generous enough to give credit to the mayor. Mrs. Zhen expresses her gratitude as she feels grateful for Su Yunlan's gesture. Su Yunlan insists that there is no need for her to be like that. But Mrs. Zhen continues to speak and points out Su Yunlan's curiosity. She knew from the start that he was not telling the truth because she knows her husband better than anyone else. She adds that if her husband really met the expert like Su Yunlan said, he would have at least sent her a letter back. But instead she has not received anything from him all this time. Su Yunlan has already prepared a forged letter for this scenario, but he is thinking twice about whether he will give it to her or just leave it. Su Yunlan assures Mrs. Zhen that he will find her husband and tells her not to worry so much. He tells her to stay strong and not do anything dangerous. Su Yunlan has already averted the danger of winter in this town, so he just asks Mrs. Zhen for her patience. Mrs. Zhen feels thankful for Su Yunlan's words. Meanwhile, at the princess camp, Su Yunlan is still having deep thoughts about where that kid got the map and the amulet from. From a distance, the second prince calls out to Su Yunlan. Su Yunlan welcomes the second prince and asks why he was calling him all the way here and follows up by asking why he is not with his wife. The second prince responds that the temperature in the mountains is just too cold for her frail body, and it is not suitable for her to be there. Su Yunlan then asks what brings the second prince here. The second prince replies that on such a cold day, Su Yunlan hasn't invited him to have tea. Su Yunlan then asks if it was really cold there and mockingly brags that he forgot he has a volcanic rock with him. He then tells the second prince to come closer so he can give him some pieces. Both have thoughts running as they were having the conversation. Su Yunlan is wondering what the second prince is up to, as he really has no business here. The second prince is also cursing Su Yunlan in his thoughts, as he failed to win over the town because of that volcanic rock. The second prince smiles as he thanks Su Yunlan for the piece of volcanic rock. He then asks Su Yunlan where he found the mayor. Su Yunlan sticks to the story he shared at the square and tells the second prince that he was at the old expert's house. He adds that the man does not want to be disturbed and asks for the second prince's understanding, for he cannot share the exact location. The second prince still has doubts about Su Yunlan's story. He wonders if Su Yunlan was able to recover from his original form and was picked up by that expert. The second prince also suspects that Su Yunlan might already know what happened and is just pretending to act confused. The second prince expresses his disappointment after Su Yunlan declines his invitation to have tea with him. He thought he could bring Su Yunlan to return with them to the Tang territory. He starts to boast about the oriental jade bamboo forest he has there and adds that it could have been a lovely place for him to spend his late years. Su Yunlan then tells the second prince where he got the message that the mayor was greedy and left the town. The second prince replies that it was all his own speculation and admits that he was wrong. He expresses his regret and wants to apologize personally to the mayor, reasoning why he wanted to know the expert's exact location. He even adds that he will go alone so he will not disturb him too much. But in his mind, the second prince's true agenda is to find the mayor so he can erase all the traces that will lead back to him. In Su Yunlan's thoughts too, he is aware that the second prince has no plans to apologize and only wants to find the mayor for his own agenda. On the other hand, a father is seen playing chase with his son. The kid then runs to Yan, and as the kid gets closer, the second prince suddenly snaps out of it and realizes that he was playing with Su Yunlan. Su Yunlan then cuts him off by asking him why he will be leaving suddenly when he was just inviting him for some tea. Su Yunlan sees the kid and thinks to himself if that kid does have something to do with the mayor. His trip to the western region is really full of secrets. Yuanying approaches Su Yunlan that they are having a problem, and at the second prince's camp, he asks Bai Zhu for an update. Bai Zhu then explains that everything is happening according to plan and that the people who have integrated into the volcanic town are spreading rumors. She continues that the princess of the Tang dynasty is useless as she is only relying on her prince consort. She concludes that if the princess takes the throne, she will just be a puppet for him. The second prince shows his interest in Bai Zhu's report. The second prince asked Bai Zhu if she knew how the people in Volcano Town reacted. Bai Zhu then told the second prince that the people were able to survive the winter, for now, thanks to Su Yunlan. With that, the people showed support to the princess, but behind all those, stories about the incompetent princess were still spreading. The people believed that there had never been a female empress since ancient times, so the idea of having the princess as the right to become the next leader of the dynasty upset them. The second prince commended her for the news and told her that they must keep spreading it until all of the western territories believed them. Bai Zhu agreed but was concerned that the western territories were large and most of their communities were very independent. Spreading the rumors all over might be a challenge. The second prince assured her that there were still some princes in western regions that were enemies of Su Yunlan. Keeping following the second prince's orders will keep them all right. On the other hand, Su Yunlan slammed his fist. He mentioned that it was a good move to Yan, who was talking about the events that happened in Volcano Town. He informed him that the second prince suddenly gave up the ownership of all the territories he already won over. The territories almost covered a third of the entire western region. The result of this made people suddenly break out in an uproar because he did not leave any reason, and went right away into hiding. Lai Tang then entered the discussion and added that the people did not agree with women being their leader. He added that his sister did not have anything to do with the events in Volcano Town. The people seemed to credit only his brother-in-law. Yan then said that the situation was exploding this time and the people were protesting and boycotting the princess rule. Yan also added that the other princes saw that the princess suddenly took a third of the territory and so have naturally sent the people to help. A message was spread throughout the whole western territory. The messages were all about the country being such a pity being led by weak women to have its master. Ying Yuan then claimed that her second brother had destroyed his own gains in order to hurt them. She described it as sacrificing 800 of his men to kill 1,000 of theirs. Su Yunlan told them that the second prince was not so stupid after all. The way he does things, he rallied the people on his side and made the population hate them. He recognized the second prince's plan was to make them the target of public criticism. then the second prince could use the support of the people to kick them out of the western territories. Even if they go back to the Tang dynasty, the reputation they have will surely plummet. Su Yunlan concludes that it is not the right time now to go back to the Tang dynasty. Yan then realizes that the rumors are putting them in a tough spot. Then Su Yunlan came up with an idea. The idea was that even though the people of the western regions believe that women could not be leaders, the basis for that was that there has never been one. The way their cultural arts do not portray women in such a way. Though they can't change the past, Su Yunlan's idea was just all about changing its future, which left Yuan Ying in disbelief. The idea was a bit ridiculous to them. Lai Tang walked towards a man announcing his free goods. They seemed to be just ordinary books, so Lai Tang was curious and asked what those books make them special. The man then hooked his arm to Lai Tang, telling him that if he didn't get what it's all about, he suggests opening it and he will find out. The book contains the founding member of the Tang dynasty, Dong Gui, who was a woman. The people then swarmed the man when they heard the book was all about the founding member being a woman. The man then offered everyone who gathered complimentary hot tea since the cold might annoy them and make them tired. The people who read were in awe and surprised at how great General Dong was. They were astonished to read the story about her fight against the Liao kingdom and how she managed to kill its leader. Some found interest in General Dong's skills, commending the way she took 12 widows and managed to take down all the enemies to save the second prince, who was very young during that time. Lai Tang also found out about how the second prince almost died in another country, but was saved by General Dong. They continued to discuss the greatness of General Dong. Some even talked about the time the Jin kingdom attacked the Hulao Pass in the Tang dynasty when all the generals were away at war. General Dong happened to be recuperating nearby, so she went out alone and fought against Zhang Sanying, the famous general of the Jin dynasty. The people continued to talk about how awesome General Dong was. They were even in awe when they learned she was also good at kung fu. The man who gave the books then asked for everyone's attention and talked about how General Dong singled out Sanying. The fight lasted for 300 rounds, and he told everyone if they could have seen it, they would never have regrets. A reader responded to him to stop talking nonsense as they could see it in this book. The man then told them to look at him for a second. He warned everyone not even to blink as they might miss it. The man then started to open the book, which looked like he cast a spell on it and made the portraits move, like a little cinema. The people were in awe of what they had just witnessed, a scene of General Dong in action. A group of men was engaged in a conversation about General Dong, praising her exceptional abilities. One man commented on how most women are weak, but General Dong is an exception. Suddenly, a man came rushing towards them, seeking their help. He informed them that beasts were attacking the mining site, and the villagers were trapped. The other men urged their companions to go and save them immediately. Later, they arrived at the scene where Yuan Ying was surrounded by the beasts, and she was trying to fend them off. She told the beasts to leave and never come back. To everyone's surprise, the beasts just stopped and retreated after hearing her command. Yuan Ying announced that she was there to protect them, and the group of men noticed something familiar about her. One man recognized her as General Dong, while another man corrected him, saying that she was the princess. The other men laughed and commented on how she would fit perfectly with the Dong bloodline. Some praised her for her powerful skills in driving off the beasts. Meanwhile, Su Yunlan was busy casting spells to dismiss the 9 nether souls, and after successfully doing so, he let out a sigh of relief. After the incident, news of the Tang dynasty's victory over the beasts spread quickly throughout the western region. Meanwhile, the second prince was furious and could not believe that people were fooled so easily. He realized that if things continued this way, his sister might become the next empress, which he did not want to happen. In deep thought, the second prince decided that he had to do something about the situation. He went back to the northern town of Volcano, where Su Yunlan and Yuan Ying were taking a hot bath together. Yunlan was mesmerized by the situation. Yuan Ying expressed concern about not having done anything over the last few days, to which Yunlan reassured her that it was important to relax after being stressed. Suddenly, there was a noise outside, where a mother called out the name Little Zhen to stop running around. This startled both Su Yunlan and Yuan Ying. Yuan Ying stood up and moved to the lounge chair. Su Yunlan then gave her a lotion to massage her back and explained that news travels slowly in the western region because of its large size and independence. According to the 8th clan, Yuan Ying's grandmother's story had only spread to a few neighboring villages. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and someone called out to Su Yunlan, informing him that 2 people were waiting outside to meet him. After that moment, Zhang Fei greeted him, and Su Yunlan expressed surprise at seeing them so soon. Meng chimed in, saying that it had been a few months and that the prince consort and princess were looking just as well as when he last saw them.